Introducing the all-new Honda Civic Type R. Whisper this because you might not believe it, but this car costs £47,000. Could a hot hatchback ever be worth 47 grand? I do not know. The old car cost 34 and a bit grand, so this is a huge jump in terms of price. But Honda reckons that this car has been tuned to within an inch of perfection in terms of its engine, its gearbox, its handling, its brakes, you name it. They reckon this is the best hot hatchback there has ever been. It needs to be for 47 grand. I'm going to drive it on the track, I'm going to drive it on the road, then I'm going to make my mind up. You'll make your mind up at the end of this video. Stick with it, because it could be good.
On paper, the new Type R doesn't seem a whole lot more potent than the old FK8 Type R it replaces. Its 2-litre engine has been heavily tweaked, yes, to produce a little bit more power at 325 bhp and a fair bit more torque at 420 Nm. The 0 to 62 time has dropped to 5.4 seconds, by the way, while the top speed has risen to 171 miles an hour, which isn't too shabby for a humble Honda Civic. Mechanically, however, the hardware it employs, including its 6-speed gearbox, is mostly familiar, which means Honda's engineers have been able to spend a lot more time fine-tuning each of the car's main components. Does it work? And is the end result really worth the extra 20% it now costs? Track first, let's find out.
So absolutely the first thing you notice when you get into the Civic Type R is just how lovely and perfect the driving position is. So many car manufacturers get this wrong, and quite a few hot hatch makers get this wrong, but Honda traditionally have always got it absolutely spot on, and with this new one I think it's better than ever. Steering wheel's just, it feels so good in the hands, this steering wheel. It's got this suede rim on it. The thickness of the rim is just perfect. Okay, so on the move, it feels really quite similar to the previous Type R, because it is really similar to the previous Type R. But I was just talking to the chief engineer and I said to him, so a lot of the hardware is basically carried over from the previous car, isn't it? The engine is fundamentally the same, the gearbox is fundamentally the same, a lot of it is basically the same car. And he said, yeah, but do you know what? That's actually allowed us twice as much time to fine-tune this new car than they normally would have. And do you know what? It really shows. It's just so delicate in everything it does. I mean, it's potent, it's fast, it's quite leery actually. 325 bhp and 420 Nm of torque it now has. It weighs a touch more than the previous car. The gearbox is even snappier than before. The brakes are even sharper and even stronger than before, and they don't fade either. The steering is, again, just better because they put a stiffer torsion bar in it, which has just snapped up the response of everything. It just feels now like the perfect version of the Civic Type R. And the Civic Type R was already a pretty perfect hot hatchback. This new dash, it's really good on the track. It's proper sort of geeky F1 style dashboard that they've got here. I really like it. Well, look, on the track, I think this car is fabulous. I knew it was going to be fabulous, but I didn't know it was going to be this fabulous. It feels a bit more compliant as well. However, full judgment needs to be reserved until I've driven it on the road as well, because it is a road car, even though it's brilliant on the track. So, okay, calm down a bit, Sutcliffe, and let's go on the road and see what the Civic Type R is like there.
As before, there are 3 main drive modes in the new Type R: Comfort, Sport and R+. Switching between the modes alters the steering weight, throttle and damper maps, the ESC map, the exhaust and even the severity of the auto blip function. In comfort mode, it rides much more comfortably than the previous model, but in Sport and R+, it's great on a track, but pretty stiff on the road, as we'll see.
As ever, this car is even better on the road, I think, than it is on the track. The new version of this engine just has heaps of torque, it really does. I don't know whether the gear ratios are closer, shorter or what, but they actually feel it because there's just more torque more of the time that you actually want it. Love the steering too. It's so informative about what's going on at the front tyres, which are Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, bespoke, made by Michelin for the Type R. I love the brakes on this car. I love the way they've set the brakes up. On the track they feel more powerful and they don't start to fade anywhere near as fast, but on the road they have delicious feel underfoot. I mean, it costs an awful lot of money, £47,000 for a Honda Civic Type R. The last one was 35 grand, so that's a big chunk more money considering you're talking about tweaked components essentially rather than brand new ones when it comes to the engine and gearbox. But I tell you what, you don't need to travel more than about half a mile in this car to realise where all the value goes in it. It is fantastic to drive. The front end is so sharp. The traction, although it's struggling a bit on this road, which is a little bit greasy, the traction is fabulous for a front-wheel drive car with this much torque and this much power. So what's not so great about the Civic Type R? I'm genuinely struggling to find anything at all. The whole car is stiffer. This body shell is about 15% stiffer, and they use these new adhesives they keep going on about, which basically make it even stiffer still. But fundamental body shell stiffness is one thing, but the suspension is pretty fruity. As a result, I think that on a UKB road you might be really very aware of how stiff the suspension is in this new Civic Type R. There aren't sharp edges to the way this car rides. Everything has a little U-bend on it. So even though it's stiff, it's not too stiff. But the rest of it is just absolutely fabulous. This one also sounds nicer than the old car. It's the same engine, same gearbox, essentially the same exhaust again, but everything about this car they've just preened and tweaked and improved and basically made it as good as it's possible to make it. And the end result, it's just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, this car. Yes, it's expensive, but from where I'm sitting in this fantastic driver's seat, I reckon it's worth every single penny. There you go.
So if there was ever any doubt about the new Type R's seemingly crazy price, or indeed its place in history, then these doubts have surely been banished. In simple terms, what we are talking about here is the best hot hatchback there has ever been, and very possibly ever will be. Amen to that, although a track test against all its key rivals surely beckons. Make sure you subscribe here so you can tune in to see that later. Cheers for watching, see you next time.